My name is Terry Horwich, and my company is Personal Affairs Management. I specialize in working with seniors and helping them to be organized on a day-to-day basis and coaching them to be more comfortable with technology and all sorts of different things. Today, I want to talk about how you relate to the phone, as well as how you relate to different digital stuff like emails. Some of that is going to be about security, and some of it is going to be about how you organize it so that it's easy for you. Let me start with security. As I'm sure you know, all sorts of scams and spam and other ways of screwing things up are really increasing. And unfortunately, especially for seniors, you've probably seen this in lots and lots of different AARP and other articles, and it's scary. Unfortunately, it's true, and you have to try to make a plan to deal with it. Some of those scams will come through emails, like per the picture that I have up on this slide, and I'll go into this later. Somebody's trying to steal something from your computer through an email. I'll talk about that. But there's also a lot of stuff that's happening on the phone, increasingly compared to before, which is interesting since there's so much technology around. But I want to start talking about phones. I want to talk about the concept of not picking up the phone. And I know that that's strange. Almost everybody that I work with, at least at the beginning, if the phone rings, they pick it up. It's true of their cell phone, it's true of their home phone. Sort of no matter what, they go and they take a look, even if it's somebody, you know, they're on the, they don't have time to talk to you. Oh, Ellen, hi, I'm busy right now, I'll call you back, instead of looking and seeing that Ellen called and not picking up. Especially, I think, with older people, there's some concern and anxiety that you're going to miss a call, because there are important calls that you want to take. Something from a doctor's office, for example, or your grandkids that don't call often enough and they said they were going to call today and they don't. You don't want to miss that. Repair person, that sort of thing. It's one thing if you know that you just put in a call to the doctor's office and the nurse said they would call you back, or the pharmacy, or the repair person who's got a schedule with you. In those circumstances, if you're in doubt, you want to pick up the phone. But in general, I find older people simply answer the phone too often, and I'll explain why in a minute. But I think it is kind of a generational thing, because for older people, sometimes some people started with party lines, but under any circumstances, they didn't have answering machines, right? And so people got trained that if the phone rings, you pick it up. Otherwise, you'll never know if somebody called or who called. In my generation, we never had call waiting. So I had to really rethink what I was doing and when I would pick up a call, because with call waiting, I could say, hold on, if it's my sister, and answer that doctor visit call. My kids don't have home phones. They only have cell phones. They do not leave messages. Somehow with each other, they just see that their friend Emily called, and so they call back if they feel like it. But Emily didn't leave a message saying why she was calling or whether it was urgent or whether it was important. So they just decide whether or not to call Emily back based on whether they see that Emily called or not. And most of the time, they don't listen to messages if you do leave them. I can't tell you how many times one of my kids will call me back and say, what's up? Even though I just left a 1.5-minute message telling them what's up and that it was important and they should do this or that. I have to repeat that because they didn't bother to listen to it. And most of the time they're texting anyway. They're not on the phone. So I know, as I'm going to go forward and tell you what not to pick up and what to avoid, it kind of is counterintuitive. It's hard to learn just not to tend to pick up the phone and at least find out what it is. But I'm going to try to convince you that sometimes that's really appropriate. As I said before, this is just some data from the state of California that shows what kind of scams tend to get people by age group. This is 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and 80 and over. And as you'll see, for younger folks, they may well be in danger mostly when they're online. For people who are 80 and over, the way that they get caught is on the phone. So it really is a significant problem that you should think in terms of what you want to do about, just like you would with online stuff. So the problem is when you don't know who it is and you think maybe it's your friend or somebody that you were expecting or somebody you might know, but you just don't know, picking up a call, just picking up the phone with a number you don't recognize is like opening a door when you're not looking through the keyhole. You have no idea who's on the other side. And I know it seems like that's just not a big deal, but just picking up the phone will invite robocalls. There are algorithms out there that will absolutely know that this number gets answered more often and they get a real person. And that's really valuable because then they can know that you're much more likely to be a prospect for whatever scam or sale or whatever they're trying to do. And often whoever that entity is will then sell your name to all sorts of other lists. So simply by picking up the phone and saying hello, you're going to get a lot more of those calls. Same thing if you pick up the phone and you don't say hello, at least it's a pickup. It's better than saying hello, but you're still going to wind up with a lot of those robocalls and sales calls. One scam that is pretty surprisingly frequent, especially now that people are using more voice technology, is that you pick up the phone and somebody says, I'm sorry, can you hear me? And you say, yes. That sounds really simple, but increasingly people are capturing that yes, duplicating it. And then if they want to do a credit card scam, for example, and you've recorded your voice over the years with the credit card company, they can play your voice saying yes when the representative says, okay, so do you want to transfer that money, etc. Not very common, but increasingly common. So you even picking up the phone can be problematic. So specifically, just don't pick up the phone with, certainly when AT&T helpfully says spam alert, right? You just don't pick it up. You probably already do that. When there are just numbers, but no name, increasingly what you'll see is that scammers are calling with a number that looks a lot like yours. So if my number starts with 847-602, the call that I will get now starts with 847-602, or it looks vaguely like my number and often, or like my kid's number. So it's tempting to pick that up because you figure, well, that must be somebody I know or close by, but it isn't necessarily. That doesn't tell you who's on the other end of the keyhole. And then lately, as these things are getting more sophisticated, often the caller ID will show somebody or something. Maybe it'll be Joe Knowledge. And you think, oh, all right, I don't know who that is, but it's a person. That must be somebody. Let me find out who it is. Or it'll be Acme Supply Company. You're not sure why they're calling you, but you know that it's an entity, so it's okay. It's not. Almost all, not all, but almost all legitimate calls will show a caller ID, and one that is specific and one that's recognizable. Occasionally you'll have somebody whose call number is blocked, like a doctor. And so again, if you're expecting a doctor's call in the next day or two, obviously that's an exception because it may be, although a lot of times that comes up as number blocked rather than coming up just as a number you don't recognize, because that's why the doctor is, trying to make sure that the cell phone number isn't given out. So most legitimate calls will show who they are, and then you can decide whether or not to pick it up. Pick it up if you recognize it. Don't pick it up if you don't. And here's why. Legitimate callers will leave a message, even if it's an important call, even if it's the pharmacy saying your prescription is ready, even if it's the doctor's office telling you some important information, even if it's apt telling you when they're going to come to repair an appliance, even if it's your friend in New York who's going to tell you about how they're doing after a fall. All of those are important calls. All of them will leave a message. So even if you go over to your phone and you're about to pick it up, It's not a bad idea. Instead, if you don't recognize it, not to pick it up, wait for the message. You can call right back. And that difference will make a real difference in how often you're at risk of being scammed or of being sold things that you don't want. If you do pick up the call, I want to go over a bunch of scams that are very popular, especially with older people, that you may or may not be aware of, because this is something you should kind of be on the alert for. This is one of those things where the worse it sounds, the more likely it is to be a scam. So calls with threats, calls that are like, you haven't paid that dental bill and we're going to turn it over to a collection agency if you don't pay today. You'd better pay by credit card today. Can you do that? Because otherwise we're going to do blah, blah, blah. ComEd, we're going to shut your lights off. Cable is a big one. We're going to stop the cable service that you have if you don't pay us. And there's a $300 bill and you say, what do you mean? That's 2 months worth. I don't understand. Well, you didn't pay it last month. When you hear those kind of threats, it's almost always a scam. ComEd's not going to shut your lights off and tell you by call. They'll send you a letter, if anything. Same thing is true of debt collectors. Same thing is true of anybody else who's really coming across harsh and threatening. If you're concerned, ask them for a number to call back, ask them who they're with, and then hang up. Calls from government agencies. Government agencies will not call you at all. Not the federal government, not the state of Illinois, none. If you get a call that says, hi, this is Social Security, it looks like somebody might have stolen your identity, we really need you to give us some information and then file a report, it's not them. They don't do it that way. The same thing is true if the IRS calls you. The same thing is true if the state of Illinois Division of Unfound Property calls you. Maybe that's a really positive one. And they say, hey, we found some property in your name from 20 years ago, and we'd like to return it to you. The only thing is, why don't you give us your bank account information and we can deposit it directly? No. If somebody says they're from a government agency, they aren't. Unless, again, and with all of these, an exception is if you know that you've just talked to someone and they're going to call back, okay, fine, pick up and find out. But otherwise, if it's someone you've never heard from before or a topic that you've never heard of, especially if it seems like a problem, assume that's a scam. Anything that starts with a taped message. So that can be really annoying. It can be a sale. And in that case, just hang up. With any of these cases, basically just hang up. But often you'll hear something that says something like, hello, we're calling about your current credit card. Your current credit card has a problem. Please call blah, 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 blah to take care of this. Or one that's really frequent. Hello, we're calling about your car warranty. Your warranty is about to expire. Please call so that we can talk to you about your warranty. That stuff sounds legitimate and concerning, right? So people do tend to pick that up. And then the minute you say hello, it switches from a taped message to a person who's very good at conning you. Any calls, I already went over any calls with threats. There are frequent medical insurance schemes. A lot of times people will call saying, and this can be a robocall or it can be an actual person saying, we can get your Medicare supplement plan much cheaper. We can get your car insurance much cheaper than it currently is, but particularly when it comes to medical supplement plans. And most of the time when they're advertising that or very cheap life insurance, that sort of thing, that's too good to be true, almost always it is. And here you may be conned into buying something, but again, sometimes they ask just for an initial small payment, and then they have your credit card or your bank information. Another robocall scam that's very frequent is one that says, hello, we can lower the interest rate on your current MasterCard ending in blah, 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 or starting with blah, 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 or your current American Airlines credit card, we can make your payments much less. Sometimes those are real, but most of the time they aren't. If a credit card company or a bank or whatever wants to send you an offer, they still send it by regular mail. They're not going to call you. Sort of like the ones I talked about before in terms of threats. A lot of times lately, you will get a call or even a text, and it says something like, "We're just checking up on your recent $972 purchase. Please call Amazon at blah, blah, blah." And you get hysterical because you didn't charge something for $972. And are you getting scammed? And what the heck is going on? So it's really tempting to say sure and have somebody get on the phone with you or to call them back. And remember, even though you have a number, if they gave it to you, you can assume that you're calling some kind of call center where the whole idea is to start getting information and scamming you. If they say, "Oh, call Amazon at this number," and you call that number, what you're going to get is, "Hello, Amazon," but it's not going to be Amazon. Never return the call to the number that they are telling you to do if you have any doubt whatsoever. Same thing if you get a call saying your credit card is overdue. Rarely, sometimes that'll be a legitimate call, but if you have no reason to think that it will be, it's probably a scam. And if you have any question about it, what you do is you look up the actual number and then you call that number, not whatever was on the tape, which can be a scam. Really, really common thing that people fall for is kind of a too good to be true offer of free products. This comes across on the TV too, but also on the phone. And the phone, if they've gotten enough information about you, can be specifically targeted. It could be a kidney supplement pill that is targeted to you because somehow they got some information that you see a nephrologist. It can be weight loss. It can be all sorts of things. Often the way this works is you'll get a call, and sometimes a letter or an email. You'll get a call saying, "We're trying to promote a new product that's fabulous. We've done research studies, and a lot of seniors are finding that they can get relief from rheumatoid arthritis if they take this supplement. And we're going to send you 3 months of the supplement, and we're going to send you the research studies that show how effective it is. And we're going to do that for free. And if you have any doubts, you're welcome to send it back. But if you like it, then we'll start charging you after 3 months or whatever." And sometimes they don't even tell you that. But then as you get into it, they say, "Oh, you know what? Since we're sending it free and being so generous, we just would appreciate it if you would pay shipping and handling. That's $14.99 for all of these pills and all of the extra things I'm telling you you're going to get," and so on. Two problems. One is, if you now give them your credit card information, who knows who has your credit card information? You may or may not ever get a shipment of anything. That can be the scam itself. The other common thing is you will get a box full of supplements or an extra gifts or whatever, but because you've given your credit card information out, you're now on an automatic plan, and it takes an enormous effort to figure out who they are and to actually cancel it. You're typically not told that now it's going to auto renew every month or every 3 months. And I have seen seniors order, very smart people, but hear something that seems to be legitimate, and all of a sudden a package that seemed like it was a great deal for $89, you get 15 different things you're interested in. Now you're getting a bill every month for $89, and there's no information to even tell you who to call. So the two main rules: don't give your bank information out over the phone. Don't give your credit card information out on the phone, especially or only if they called you. If somebody calls you, no matter how legitimate it sounds, whether it sounds like your bank, Amazon, whatever else, if they say, "Oh, we just need your PIN number for verification," or "Oh, we just need the last 4 digits of your credit card," or "Oh, we just need your date of birth and social security number," just to verify that you're legitimate. And you think, "Oh, that sounds reasonable," and then you give that information out. Don't do it if they called you. Different set of circumstances if you are calling your investment company and saying, I have a question about such and such, and they say, okay, can you give me the last 4 of your social? Can you give me your date of birth? That's different. As long as you know that that number is legitimate, if you call them, fine, give that information out when you have to. But if somebody calls you, no matter how legitimate it sounds, just don't give out your financial information. Not your birthday, not your social security number, not any financial information. You can always do it yourself if you want to. And then, as I mentioned before, a lot of times the number that came in on caller ID or the number they give you, well, of course, ma'am, check out that we are a legitimate airline company, and you can call back and you'll get the agent in charge. You can book your tickets with him. Oh, okay. And then you look at that number and you call that number and it answers Volaris, an airline that I had an experience with. And you think, well, okay, I've reached the airline. That was a legitimate number. Except you're really talking to somebody in Syria who is really just trying to get information from you. Maybe they'll actually book a ticket and send you an email showing the ticket, but it's not a legitimate ticket. So don't call back that number if they gave it to you on a call that you did not start. Check the phone number. Now, unfortunately, another scam that's happening now is that if you Google a particular company, sometimes the first, second, or third thing that comes up is not actually that company. You'll see something that says, let's say you're looking up Commonwealth Edison. You'll see something that says official Commonwealth Edison site, and that's the first thing you click on, and they take you to a page that is trying to sell you something else, or that is a scam that looks a lot like ComEd but isn't ComEd. So be very careful. I'll talk in a little while about how to do that with web pages, but be very careful when you are looking up a phone number. If you look it up online, check the address, check the URL, make sure it actually says something sensible like www.comed.com, not Real ComEd Chicago, or something else that maybe you're suspicious of. If in doubt, don't call that first number. Usually, if you scroll down a little bit and you look carefully, you'll see the Real ComEd or another organization where the address, the URL address, matches who you're trying to call. Okay, so I've talked a lot about phone calls. The thing that people are often really concerned about is their interaction with emails specifically, and then the web generally. The same principles apply here, which is, it's one thing if you are corresponding with a particular company, you're getting a receipt from Banana Republic when you just shopped there, you start the email chain, that's one thing. But anything that comes into you should be looked at with some concern or suspicion. So let me tell you what I mean specifically. Most people are afraid of being hacked. I work with a lot of people where something goes wrong on their phone, something doesn't work right, an app doesn't work, and excuse me, or they have some other problem in particular, and they say, oh my God, have I been hacked? I got this message, I've been hacked. It's almost never going to be true that your phone or your iPad or your laptop has actually been hacked. Hacked means that somebody has gotten access to that device and they've taken your information from it. Governments do that with each other. There are lots of other entities that are at risk for it, but individuals almost no time get hacked. And that's particularly true for iPhones and other smartphones. It's very unlikely that somebody's going to get into your phone and hack you in any way, that's concerning. Since, using the iPhone as an example, since there are often upgrades that sometimes come every several days, weeks, or months, sometimes when that upgrade happens, there are going to be problems with certain apps. There's going to be something you're not familiar with, something that doesn't work. It's much more likely, if you're having trouble with that it has to do with that kind of change rather than with something where somebody hacked you. So in some sense, you can be a little bit more relaxed about that possibility. However, the real problem, and again, especially with everybody, but especially with seniors who are being targeted, is being phished. And that's a strange term, but essentially it refers to a situation where somebody sends you something, could be a text, but which is pretty much the same, but I'll talk about emails. What's happening is they're sending you something, and in some way they want to get information from you that they can then use or build upon to get something from you, usually your financial information, or sometimes your date of birth or your social security number or something else. So the idea is you get an email that looks like it's from a legitimate company. Again, let's use AT&T as an example. So it looks like AT&T is sending you a perfectly good email. It has the same logos and colors. It's the same thing you're used to seeing all the time. And it says your account has a problem, or we're giving away, a car, or whatever it is that tempts you into clicking that link. That link, if it's a scam, will now direct you to a website. And that website looks like AT&T. Same logos, same general appearance, lots of fine print at the bottom. And it tells you either we need you to correct your password, or we need you to pay your bill, or we need you, excuse me, to click here to get this wonderful gift. All we need is your information for shipping and handling. And what you're really doing is you're now on a fake website that looks just like AT&T, but it isn't. And so if you give up your password or some security information that you're likely to use on a lot of other sites too, or your credit card information, it may say, please change your password and update your credit card. Is this correct? Yes. We're filling these things. Yes. So you've now just given a lot of confidential information, thinking that you're dealing with a legitimate company that you go online with, maybe, and it looks just like that, but you're not. And I'll tell you how to deal with that. On the right side here, with almost every email, it may come across, assuming that it's a scam, it may come across where what it says is from Netflix. And so now it looks legitimate, right? But if you take, whether you're on a phone or wherever, if you take your cursor or point to that email, it will give you the long email. And just like with what we talked about before with URL addresses on the front page of Google or whatever, you can see, does it look like www.netflix.com? Does it look like info@www.netflix.com? Does it look like customer service @netflix.com? Or, as in this example, does it say a whole lot of gobbledygook that probably has nothing to do with Netflix? Instead of netflix.com, does it say info at Netflix One? So the first thing you want to do always is check that return address. And if it's something that looks illegitimate, just delete the email. Almost never click on the link in the email. And I really mean this because I don't want to scare people, and it takes an extra step, and sometimes it's a real pain. But unless you're careful and you really look at the email and you do the kinds of stuff I recommend, if in doubt in any way, don't hit the link in the email to now be taken to your bank or your credit card or Amazon or whatever. If the email says, hey, we need to talk to you about your account, or you just ordered $1,000 worth of things, or we have a free gift for you, some credit you haven't used or whatever, even if, unless you know it's an order that you just placed and you're getting a receipt from it, put the email aside if you're going to respond to it in any way, and now go and log in with your password and stuff the way you normally do. Because again, if you click on the link, it may look like you're being taken to CitiCard, but you're not. So get out of your email, and then when you want to, now go into Amazon and see if there really is a $1,000 bill there or not. Most of the time, certainly if you're being phished, you'll see that things look just fine in your account. And I find that people get insecure about this once they have received an email that says there's a problem in their account. But then they go on Amazon, for example, and there isn't a problem, but they say, oh my God, I got that text. I don't know what's going on. If in doubt, call them after you've verified the number. But again, don't click on the link in the email itself. And if your account looks good, it's probably just fine. Just like with phone calls, usually the worse the message is, the more likely it's fraud. So Social Security does not email you to say your payment is going to be delayed, or your Social Security number has been hacked, or anything like that. Again, if it's from a government agency, you will get something in the actual mail. Most of the time, your payment's not going to be delayed for any particular reason. But the point is, if an email looks threatening, worrisome, it's designed to do that so that you have an instant response and you click on that link, and you don't want to do that if you're in any doubt at all. As I said before, if it's legitimate and important, again, whether it's from a government agency or ComEd, you haven't paid your bill, or your insurance agent or anything else, you will get a copy of it in the real mail. It's almost always legally required, especially if somebody's trying to collect a debt or for whatever other reason get your financial information. And you're almost never going to be asked in the mail for your Social Security number. That may be a scam too. But if it's something where somebody is threatening something and you're saying your utilities may be cut off, or it's financial or whatever, worst comes to worst, if it's true, they'll send you something in the mail and you will have time to deal with it. So no reason to rush, no reason to panic. Just wait if you're not sure. The other big concern besides phishing is somebody getting your passwords. And this is increasingly a problem. And again, particularly for older people, because we worry that we're going to lose a password. We worry we won't remember a password. And so one way or another, we use something that's very familiar and we use it on all of our websites. That's a problem, and it gets very easy now to get access and use that password on a different site so that they get access to your bank or your credit card company. I have clients who have what they call a purse list, or had, and they just have a simple list of passwords, maybe just the most important ones, and they tuck it into the teeniest part of their wallet where they think it won't be found. But what if you lose your purse? It may be found. And if somebody gets even several of your passwords that are similar to the ones you had before, it could be a problem. One that I also see frequently is somebody using their iPad, or particularly their phone, to try to store passwords in a way that is sort of sneaky, that they think no one's going to know. So I have people who have under contacts, where the first screen on contacts is the email and the address and the phone number and so on. There's also a tab you may never have noticed that says notes. And that's helpful if you want to say, gee, this is my, this subscription goes until July. Here's my subscription number, whatever. It is not helpful to put your login and password in those notes. Sure, it's easy for you to then just look up the contact and then put that information in when you're trying to log in. But if you think it's sneaky and it will fool somebody who's really trying to get information, assume no. If it's something you can lose, like a phone, even if you don't, that doesn't happen very often, even if you have a passcode and it gets locked, don't assume that anything on that phone can't be taken. So especially when it comes to bank and credit card and other important financial information, don't put it in the contacts or in the notes or in some other app, unless it's a password app. If you do nothing else and you go online, remember the passwords for your bank and your credit card number, if that's all you need, because those are things you just don't want people to get access to. I said before, and you've probably read about it, excuse me, that one very strong recommendation that people make is don't use the same password for everything. Because if any of those websites are hacked, it's possible that people will get your information, including your password, that can be used elsewhere. Unlikely, but it's possible. And again, remember that while you are unlikely to be hacked, it's possible that Netflix could be. And the information that they have with your address, with your credit card, and so on, could be vulnerable. There's not much you can do about that. You can't really prevent Netflix from being hacked. One thing you can do is that for anything other than your bank and credit card, for example, where you really need to go see it, or go to that site often, with other companies, you just don't put your credit card information in. You don't save it. I know that's a real pain, because if you go to Amazon with some frequency, you're going to want to save your credit card information in there so you don't have to look it up every time. I store my credit card information on Amazon, and in some other places where I go pretty quickly, or pretty often, and where I have a lot of faith that it's unlikely that that company is going to be hacked. For other kinds of things, your grocery store, the department store that you pay once in a while, the water bill, whatever, the symphony, I would say avoid putting the credit card on there if you can. If you have an adequate place to find your passwords, which I'll talk about in a minute, it's better for you to find that password on the occasions that you need it rather than leaving it on that site. The best way to protect yourself, and it's really, really, really important, is to get a password program. And when I say program, I'm talking about either an app on your phone or your iPad, or something that is an app that's designed to be used on your laptop. Two of them that I like, because they're pretty simple to set up, are 1Password and LastPass. Those are both apps you can download on the app stores. There are small charges for the subscription. So I think 1Password is $3.99 a month. But what it does is well worth that expenditure. And there may be some that are free, at least for minimal kinds of use. But I know 1Password does charge that small subscription fee. It's a lot more important, or at least as important as Netflix, because what happens is you set it up and you put your passwords in there for anything that you might want to go online for. And from now on, let's use the phone for an example. Let's say that, you want to go to the American Airlines app and look at your trips and your credit card start in there and so on. Once you have put in that American Airlines login and password, and it goes in just like a contact, it's easy. From now on, two things happen. One, you can go to 1Password to that app and you can look it up whenever you want to. And it is secure, and you don't have to carry paper around with you, and you don't have to wonder where your password list is or leave it in the desk. You just hit that app and go to Netflix and you'll see your login and password. What's even better though, and really time saving, is that if you have a password app like that, it will fill in for you on a whole lot of websites. Occasionally it won't for banks and credit card information, which is, I think, just a good safety measure. But once you have it set up, if you want to go look at the TV guide on Netflix, you hit Netflix, and where it says login and password, 1Password will fill that information in for you. Excuse me. So you're saving time by not having to put it in yourself, but you're also much more secure because you didn't memorize it so that it comes up every time somebody hits that app. Again, if you lost your phone, you don't want to memorize passwords in that app. It's convenient, but then somebody can just hit on Netflix, and if your credit card information is there, that can be dangerous. So I would really strongly recommend using one of those password programs. It takes a little bit of setup. It's just like putting contacts in for anything you use online, any website. You just store it in there. And as you go, if you go to new websites where you create logins, 1Password will then say, do you want to store this in 1Password? You say yes, and it becomes very easy. A lot of times with apps, and this is whether you use a password program or not, you increasingly can use your own face, facial recognition, or your finger to sign something, almost anything. Excuse me. And that's really convenient. There are people who feel like it's creepy. I think it's creepy, but creepy or not, it's very, very convenient. And it's actually much more secure than using a password. And again, these password programs like 1Password, if you have facial recognition or your finger or whatever set up with a particular app, American Airlines or whatever, then when you open that app, 1Password will look at your face and it will open the app for you. You can even make 1Password do that, so that when you pick up the phone and you hit the app 1Password, it'll look at your face and now you've got access to everything. It's very quick and very convenient. Just briefly, I want to talk about something that I think is important when it comes to online stuff or digital stuff like phones and iPads that people don't often think about or implement, which is this. You don't have to use everything just because it's there. You don't have to see everything just because it was downloaded at some point or it came in the iPhone or whatever. The iPhone, I don't know how many apps it comes with, native apps, maybe 20 or 30. And then maybe you've added a few for Uber and something else, but it's pretty easy that over time, maybe you accidentally downloaded an app when you were online. Over time, you've got pages of apps. You've got 3 pages of apps and you don't use half of them. You never will. You don't shop at that store anymore. You didn't like the app or whatever. Get rid of it. Just take it off, because it's a whole lot easier to find the app you need if you're scrolling through 1 or 2 pages instead of 6 or 7. There are also really easy ways, and you could look this up on Google or ask anybody who's more savvy with the phone than you are, to just rearrange them and organize them. So, for example, some people I know will put rides and transportation. They'll create a folder simply by dragging 2 apps together. And now when they hit that folder, they see Uber and parking and other ride companies and their limo company. And it doesn't crowd up the appearance of the pages on the iPhone, but it's easy to go find that group of apps. Other ways you can organize are just to put the most important, most frequently used things up front. Usually when you get the phone, this is done to some extent. You'll see contacts and messages and mail and photos and some other native applications on the first page. But sometimes you want your bank on the very first page. Sometimes you want Facebook. Whatever it is, you can change the organization, and I recommend you do, because over time it will save you a whole lot of time and energy rather than trying to find that app. And the same thing is true with a laptop or going online. Increasingly, your kids, if they're like mine, and other people will ask you to do things online, or almost force you to do things online or on your phone in some cases. You don't have to do everything online. I suggest you think about how you like to interact with the world. So even if your accountant's office is saying, please go on our portal and just log in there and then you can fill this out, or your your doctor will say, oh, just go on my chart and you can see everything there. If you can do that, if you can get help and set up a login, it's great, because you'll get lots and lots of information. You can send messages. Some doctors, unfortunately, are requiring that. But if you're a person who wants to talk on the phone and you feel more secure doing that, then do that. You can tell the doctor that, sorry, you're not a person who goes on my chart. And it seems sort of intuitive to say that, but I do see people who feel very pressured and very nervous about the fact that there is an app or a website online that they're not using. They don't know how to use it. And they feel insecure and dumb. Your kids may tell you, Mom, just go online, and they set stuff up for you, but you're just not comfortable. You haven't learned how to do it for whatever reason. I think you, just like with paperwork, you come up with a system, you come up with a list of things that you are comfortable with and that you want to use, and Just use that. Don't try to do a whole bunch of stuff that other people want you to do. I've given some examples already about simplifying, but there are a few more tips that I can offer. Let's say you only use email for your book group, your movie group, your 3 best friends who use email, your bank and credit card, maybe even that. The best thing to do is make sure that those people are in your contacts, that you have their information and they have your information, so that when it comes in, it'll come in as Joe from book group and it won't go into spam. But you don't have to give that email out. Nowadays, you go to a store, they ask for your phone number, and a lot of times they'll ask for your email. Well, what that means is they say, let me just look you up. What that means is they're going to start spamming you with, please buy this, please buy that. It's from the legitimate company, but you're going to get a lot more email than you want from lots and lots of places that you don't need. So think about not providing your email. You don't have to. There's no reason that you have to do that. If it's Barnes & Noble, you can join a club and go there or call them. You don't have to necessarily do it online. One thing that I find helpful is to create a second or even a third email. Nowadays, you can create any email you want on Google in about a minute. So you can decide that you want margeshopping@gmail.com. When you go to stores or you interact with vendors or other people where it's convenient, you want to see the emails, but you don't want them mucking up your inbox, use that email. It's, again, not hard to set up. And then you get in the habit, when you're at a store, you give this one and, your friends already know yours. If you work on a laptop, similarly, you can add shortcuts, especially through Google, so that you don't even have to go to the right web page to log in. You have logos, pictures that say Citibank, Harris Bank, library, whatever it is that you want to use often, so that it's one click. You just have to remember where that picture is on the very first page. And again, this is something that, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. You can Google how to do it. You can ask anybody who knows a little bit more and is happy to help you. When you get emails from places you don't want, unsubscribe. Almost always there's a little teeny weeny link at the bottom that says unsubscribe. And other than the emails that I said are suspicious, don't hit that link either. But if it's a legitimate email, but just from a company that you don't want to deal with, unsubscribe from them, or even better, drag them to your junk, because over time, your laptop, your phone, your iPad will learn that that is an entity you don't want to hear from, and they'll just automatically put the information in junk so you never have to see it. And finally, a lot of people are nervous about putting their bills on autopay, and I understand. Traditionally, we want to look at our credit card statement before we decide whether or not to pay it. What if I don't have the receipt for that? What if I don't recognize that vendor, or I wasn't there that date? That's a scam, whatever. Of course, that makes sense. So you, a lot of times, want to look at a paper copy. So you have the credit card statement sent to you by mail. You have the bank statement sent to you by mail. Maybe your utilities. Great. That is your traditional and easy way to do it. And there's no reason that you have to stop it if that's what you're comfortable with. That is separate, though, and most people don't realize it, from whether or not you're on autopay. You can put your ComEd bill on autopay, even if you never go online to ComEd for any reason whatsoever. You can do it over the phone if you've carefully called the right number. And that way you can be relieved that you're never going to be late on the ComEd bill. You don't have to write checks every month. It's going to be paid, but you are still going to get a paper statement to review, and it's going to come before you have to actually, or before the auto pay payment is actually made. So if there's a mistake, if it looks like ComEd, charged you twice, you call them up the way you always did. The fact that it's on auto pay doesn't make a difference, because if there's a problem, you can tell them to stop this month's auto pay. You'll have time to do that. And even if it's auto paid, if there's a dispute, if there's a problem, you can go back and it will be corrected. It's not like you have to do it first thing. You obviously don't want a lot of money coming out of your account. But again, you will get the paper bill first, and that's totally separate from whether or not it's auto paid. And even with credit cards too. Sometimes it takes a while to get to the credit card and compare that to your receipts, if that's what you do. And it takes some time, and you're worried about being late or sending out a check. Instead of having to write that check out and look at the bill date, you can put the credit card payment on auto pay. But if, excuse me, if you ever have a problem and there's something on there from elephant.com you don't recognize, you can still call the credit card company, dispute that particular transaction. If it's fraud, they will refund it, or a similar kind of legitimate problem. So again, the idea is to be simple and true to yourself in terms of what you do or what you don't do. If it's convenient to have things paid so you don't have to worry about it, great. If it's convenient to also get paper statements, do that. You don't have to sort of choose to be all online or not online. Sometimes when I say something's a very simple setup, that's true for me, but it may not be true if you have never used your laptop. As in some cases, I have some clients who are really savvy with their iPhone or iPad, or at least they can use it in a way that feels comfortable to them, but they've never touched a laptop. Sometimes it's vice versa, or they really are not comfortable using their phone. So there are lots of ways to try to get help to set things up in a way that are comfortable for you and easy for you and simple for you. If you can't do it yourself, hopefully you have a kid or a grandkid or a friend or a friend's grandkid or someone who cares enough about you that you can make an appointment with them and say, look, would you give me 2 hours? I know what I want to do. I've thought it through. Do you have something that an app that does this you can download for me? Can you rearrange the apps for me so I get rid of the stuff I don't need? Can you show me on the email what to do about emails I don't want to receive anymore? As a sandwich generation person who has helped my mom and clients and friends of my mom and so on, I will tell you that it is harder by far to try to talk somebody through something when my mom calls, 3 times frantic because she's a smart woman, but there are things she doesn't understand. And she calls me and says, I can't get into my bank account. What do I do? Or the screen went black. What do I do? There may be some of that, and of course I'm happy to help, but I would much rather sit down, and did, with her stuff and set things up and periodically come over and set things up in a way that makes it much easier for her to learn and her to use it in a simple way going forward. If you pitch it that way to somebody's kid or grandkid, you may wind up having a better response than if you are kind of constantly calling to ask, how do I get into Netflix or whatever. You can also, if you have the energy, just take some classes. Nowadays, there are classes almost everywhere on basic iPhone use, basic laptop use, how to use the internet, etc. A lot of times, senior centers will offer that, or local libraries will offer that. ElderWorks, I believe, offers that periodically. Keep your eye out, and whether it's online and somebody has to help you get online, or whether it's in person, it can make you very anxious if you've never done it before, but for the most part, by the time you're done, you're going to understand a lot more and you will be less anxious about it. If you're having trouble, hire somebody to help you. You can certainly, there are lots and lots of people who will teach you how to use your phone for your purposes. I even have seen small groups of friends get together. Maybe there are 3 women who all need the same thing and they want to work with a consultant who will help them. One way or another, whether it's paid or free, wherever it's offered, you will find a way to try to get what you need out of phone, internet, etc., if you have the confidence to just try to set it up. So thank you very much for listening. I am Terry Horwich of Personal Affairs Management, and I hope that this has been helpful.